You spot a dark brown insect slipping beneath a lettuce leaf, and the curved pincers at the end of its body make the decision feel obvious. Your fingers close in. One quick crush, one less pest in your garden. But before you do it again, look at what is happening around that insect. Are aphids clustered on the new growth? Are mites stippling the leaves? Are insect eggs hidden along the stems? Is decaying plant material collecting beneath the mulch? Wait a second. The creature you just killed may have been hunting the organisms that were actually threatening your plants. You crushed an ally. Insect, European earwig, Forficula auricularia. The earwig is not an innocent vegetarian, and it is not always beneficial. It is an omnivore, meaning it eats both animal and plant material. So the same individual that consumes aphids tonight may nibble a flower petal tomorrow. That mixed diet is exactly why you need to judge it by evidence rather than appearance. In your garden, a modest earwig population can work as a free nocturnal cleanup crew, reducing soft-bodied pests, eating insect eggs, and recycling damaged plant tissue. A dense population concentrated around seedlings, flowers, strawberries, or ripening stone fruit can become destructive. In this episode, you are going to learn how to tell those two situations apart, how to identify genuine earwig damage, why the pincers are far less dangerous than they look, and when your best response is to leave the insect alone, relocate it, or reduce the conditions that allowed its numbers to rise. Your first reaction may be that this insect belongs to some alien category of garden invader. But the European earwig is a well-defined member of the insect order Dermaptera, a name that refers to its unusual folded wings. Forficula auricularia is the species most often associated with gardens, yards, mulch beds, compost areas, and accidental indoor invasions across much of the United States. It originated in Europe and Western Asia and became established in North America during the early 20th century. It is now especially familiar in cooler and temperate regions, including much of the northern United States, the Pacific Northwest, the Mountain West, and many irrigated landscapes farther south. Other native and introduced earwig species also occur in the country, so not every earwig you see is necessarily Forficula auricularia, but the European earwig is the standard garden species in many communities. An adult is usually about 13 to 15 millimeters long, roughly half an inch, not counting the forceps at the end of the abdomen. Its body is flattened, reddish-brown to dark brown, with 6 pale to brown legs and a pair of long antennae made of multiple small segments. The flattened shape lets it press into cracks beneath boards, flower pots, loose bark, stones, mulch, and folded leaves. The structures that look like rear-facing stingers are cerci, paired appendages modified into forceps. Male forceps are usually more strongly curved, while female forceps tend to be straighter. They are used for defense, mating, handling food, and unfolding the hind wings. They are not venom injectors. The earwig is also not a beetle, even though its body can look beetle-like at a glance. Beetles belong to the order Coleoptera and have hard front wings that meet in a straight line over the back. Earwigs have very short, leathery front wings, and beneath them can lie delicate fan-shaped hind wings folded with extraordinary compactness. Many European earwigs rarely fly, but they are not truly wingless. They are also not parasites, not blood feeders, and not specialized household pests. When one wanders into your bathroom or basement, it is usually searching for moisture and shelter, not food from your pantry, and certainly not a human host. You may assume that an earwig spends the night cutting holes in your plants, but its actual routine is broader and more opportunistic. During daylight, it hides in a cool, dark, humid space where water loss is reduced. After sunset, it emerges and begins searching across soil, stems, flowers, bark, and low foliage. It feeds on dead insects, decaying leaves, fungi, algae, pollen, tender plant tissue, soft-bodied arthropods, and exposed eggs. Aphids are frequent prey because they are slow, defenseless, and often crowded together. Mites, small larvae, scale insects, and the eggs of moths and other insects can also be eaten when the earwig encounters them. Its hunting equipment is simple but effective. The antennae sweep ahead through the darkness, detecting surfaces and chemical cues. The mouthparts are chewing mouthparts, meaning they cut and grind rather than pierce and suck. Once the earwig contacts a small prey animal, it can seize it with its jaws and sometimes bend the abdomen forward so the forceps help restrain or position the meal. The forceps are not a pair of lethal scorpion weapons. They function more like movable clamps attached to an extremely flexible abdomen. You may also imagine earwigs as careless insects that scatter eggs and abandon them, but the female shows one of the most developed forms of maternal care among familiar garden insects. She excavates or occupies a small underground chamber, often several centimeters below the surface, and lays a clutch that commonly contains several dozen eggs. A clutch around 30 to 50 eggs is typical, although the number varies with the female and local conditions. She guards the eggs, turns them, cleans them with her mouthparts, and removes fungal contamination. After hatching, the pale young, called nymphs because they resemble small wingless adults, remain with her during their earliest stage. They pass through 4 nymphal stages before reaching adulthood. Depending on climate and population, the European earwig may produce 1 or sometimes 2 broods in a year. That family behavior matters in your garden because a sudden cluster beneath one board may not represent dozens of unrelated invaders arriving from outside. It may be a local shelter occupied by a female and her offspring. Moist soil, heavy mulch, boards lying flat on the ground, leaky irrigation, dense weeds, and stacks of pots can turn one protected site into an earwig nursery. Removing the shelter often changes the population more effectively than spraying every plant. Now look at the damage before you blame the insect. Earwig feeding on leaves usually produces irregular, ragged holes rather than the neat circular cuts made by leafcutter bees. The injury may appear as scattered holes within a leaf, shredded edges, or scraped areas where thin tissue has been removed. On flower petals, especially dahlias, marigolds, zinnias, and similar blooms, the edges can look chewed, uneven, and frayed by morning. On young seedlings, the injury can be much more serious because a few bites can remove a large percentage of the plant's total leaf area. Earwigs may also chew corn silks, damage tender shoots, enter soft fruit, or enlarge cracks that were started by birds, weather, or other insects. But an irregular hole is not a conviction. Slugs and snails also feed at night and leave ragged holes, especially in seedlings and low leaves. The difference is that slug feeding is often accompanied by a shiny slime trail on the leaf, pot, soil, or nearby edging. Earwig damage has no slime. On strawberries, an earwig can make a small, deep cavity in the fruit, and that cavity may resemble slug injury until you check for slime. Caterpillars also leave chewing damage, but they commonly leave dark pellets of droppings, called frass, near the feeding site. Many caterpillars remain on the plant during the day, hiding along veins or inside rolled leaves. Earwigs usually retreat into tight shelters after sunrise. Aphid damage looks entirely different. Aphids do not chew holes. They insert narrow mouthparts into plant tissue and remove sap, causing curled leaves, distorted shoots, sticky honeydew, and sometimes black sooty mold growing on that sugary residue. Mites usually produce fine, pale stippling, bronzing, or webbing rather than missing chunks of tissue. Japanese beetles often skeletonize leaves by eating the soft tissue between veins, leaving a lace-like pattern. When you see ragged holes without slime, find earwigs feeding on the plant after dark and discover them hiding directly beneath the pot or mulch below that plant during the day. The evidence becomes much stronger. Your instinct may still tell you that any animal capable of chewing a petal is a pest, but the ecological question is not whether it ever eats a plant. The question is what it eats most often in your particular garden, and whether the net effect is helping or harming you. European earwigs are documented predators of aphids, including the green apple aphid, Aphis pommi, and the woolly apple aphid, Iriosoma lanigerum. They also consume mites and insect eggs, including eggs that would otherwise hatch into leaf-feeding larvae. In orchards, they can become important natural enemies, meaning predators that suppress pest populations without requiring a pesticide application. The scale of that effect can be striking. In one apple orchard experiment, researchers placed only 5 or 6 European earwigs in each young apple tree. The trees began with close to 500 green apple aphids each. After 3 weeks, aphid numbers on trees with earwigs fell below 50. In a nearby block where earwigs were excluded, aphid numbers rose above 3,000 per tree. A separate control block approached 2,000 aphids per tree. That does not mean 5 earwigs will solve every outbreak in your yard. It shows that when prey is accessible, the predator is established, and broad-spectrum insecticides have not removed the rest of the food web. A small number of earwigs can exert substantial pressure. For you, the practical benefit is continuous nighttime patrol. An insecticide works only where you apply it while its residue remains active, and against organisms that contact or consume it. An earwig moves beneath leaves, inside bark crevices, around flower clusters, and along stems where eggs and aphids are hidden. It does not require you to identify every prey item in advance. It also does not leave a chemical residue on lettuce, berries, flowers, or soil. Chemical control can create a second problem. Broad-spectrum products may kill aphid predators along with aphids, including earwigs, lacewing larvae, lady beetles, predatory bugs, and parasitoid wasps. When the residue fades, fast-reproducing pests can return before their natural enemies recover. Pyrethroid insecticides are particularly disruptive to many beneficial arthropods and can contribute to secondary outbreaks of pests, such as spider mites. By crushing every earwig or spraying every hiding place, you may remove one component of the biological control system and then wonder why aphids rebound. The tipping point is visible on the plant. 1 or 2 earwigs found beneath a pot with no fresh injury on seedlings or fruit do not justify control. Even several earwigs in a mature ornamental bed may be harmless or beneficial when aphids are present and the plants are not losing meaningful tissue. But if you inspect after dark and find earwigs actively feeding on young transplants, if a seedling loses more than roughly 1/4 of its leaf area in 2 or 3 nights, or if new flowers and ripening fruit are being damaged night after night, the balance has shifted. At that point, the earwigs are no longer merely incidental predators. Their plant feeding has become economically or aesthetically important to you. You may think the pincers make the earwig dangerous enough to kill on sight, but the threat to you is extremely low. The European earwig has no venom gland connected to its forceps. It has no stinger. It does not seek human blood, transmit venom through a bite, or tunnel into ears. The old story that earwigs crawl into sleeping people's ears and enter the brain is folklore, not biology. Like many small insects, an earwig could accidentally enter an open ear canal, but that rare accident is not a normal behavior and does not make the species a parasite. A large adult can pinch your skin if trapped in your hand or pressed against your body. The sensation may be surprising, and the forceps can occasionally leave a temporary red mark, but they usually cannot cause significant injury. The insect's first strategy is escape. When you lift a board and see it run rapidly toward darkness, that speed is not a charge. It is flight from light, heat, dryness, and exposure. The earwig is trying to place its flattened body under the nearest object before a bird, lizard, spider, ground beetle, or human catches it. Even the raised abdomen is easily misread. An earwig may curve the forceps upward when threatened, creating a posture that resembles a scorpion. A scorpion, however, delivers venom through a specialized stinger at the tip of its tail. An earwig has a flexible abdomen ending in mechanical forceps. The resemblance is visual, not functional. If one lands on your hand, you do not need to slap it. Lower your hand near the ground or brush it gently onto a leaf. You may see earwigs as the problem, but their presence often tells you more about your garden than their feeding does. If you find many earwigs beneath pots, landscape fabric, boards, or thick mulch, you have persistent moisture and abundant daytime shelter nearby. If they are entering your basement, bathroom, garage, or ground floor rooms, the exterior foundation may be damp, irrigation may be striking the wall, mulch may be touching the siding, or gaps around doors and utility lines may be open. The insects are acting as biological moisture indicators. If you see earwigs concentrated in an aphid-infested apple tree, rose, bean plant, or ornamental shrub, you probably have a prey source above them. Inspect the newest leaves for aphid colonies, curled growth, sticky honeydew, and ants. Ants often protect honeydew-producing aphids from predators, so a stream of ants climbing the stem can explain why the aphids remain abundant even when earwigs are present. If you see earwigs inside damaged peaches, apricots, or strawberries, do not immediately assume they opened the fruit. Check whether the skin was already split, pecked, overripe, or damaged by slugs. Earwigs frequently use existing openings because soft, exposed tissue is easier to eat and provides a humid refuge. Their absence can also be informative. A garden with a severe aphid outbreak but almost no predators may have been treated repeatedly with broad-spectrum insecticides, may offer too little shelter for beneficial arthropods, or may be dominated by ants guarding the aphids. Restoring biological control means more than purchasing one beneficial species. It means reducing unnecessary pesticide use, tolerating modest predator populations, providing varied vegetation, and correcting conditions that strongly favor the pest. Your best response now depends on what the evidence shows. The first option is to leave the earwig alone. Choose this when you find only a few individuals, your mature plants show no meaningful chewing injury, and soft-bodied pests such as aphids, mites, or insect eggs are present. Return after dark with a flashlight and observe before acting. If the earwig is moving through an aphid colony or feeding on damaged material rather than healthy growth, you are watching biological control in real time. The second option is relocation or selective trapping. Choose this when earwigs are useful elsewhere, but are damaging a vulnerable seedling bed, prized flowers, or ripening berries.
Place a short piece of bamboo, a rolled strip of corrugated cardboard, a section of hose, or loosely rolled newspaper beside the affected plants before nightfall. Earwigs will often shelter inside by morning. Shake the trap into a container and move the insects to a compost area, an established shrub with aphids, or a part of the yard where tender plants are absent. Check the shelter daily. This method targets the individuals using that exact bed without coating the garden in insecticide. The third option is to fix the root cause. Remove boards and unused pots lying flat on damp soil. Thin excessive mulch so it is no deeper than the plants require, and keep it several inches away from the foundation. Repair dripping faucets and irrigation leaks. Water early enough for the soil surface and foliage to dry before night. Pull dense weeds touching seedlings. Harvest ripe fruit promptly, remove split fruit, and elevate strawberries away from wet ground. Seal door sweeps, screens, foundation cracks, and openings around pipes when earwigs are entering your home. Indoors, vacuum them rather than spraying baseboards. They do not establish a feeding colony in your walls, like termites or cockroaches. Use a concrete intervention threshold. Do not act because you found one earwig under a flower pot. Act when 2 nighttime inspections confirm active feeding on the same vulnerable plants, when fresh damage appears on consecutive mornings, or when a young seedling has lost about 25% of its leaf area. In a fruit bed, act when new deep cavities without slime appear repeatedly and earwigs are found on the fruit after dark. Begin with daily shelter traps and moisture reduction. Reserve insecticidal bait or a labeled treatment for a persistent damaging population that continues after several days of trapping and habitat correction. Avoid spraying open flowers and never treat an entire yard for insects concentrated in one damp corner. The lesson is not that every earwig deserves protection. The lesson is that your garden is a network of feeding relationships, and appearance alone tells you almost nothing about an animal's net effect. Forficula auricularia can be a predator, scavenger, recycler, nuisance, and plant feeder in the same week. One individual beneath a pot may be removing aphids from your roses. 50 packed around germinating lettuce may destroy the crop before it develops true leaves. Your job is not to choose between calling the species good or bad. Your job is to read the evidence, the number of insects, the age of the plant, the type of damage, the presence or absence of slime and frass, the moisture level, the available prey, and what you observe after sunset. The next time your hand moves toward an earwig, stop for one inspection. Look at the leaf above it. Look for aphids on the stem. Look for eggs beneath the veins. Look at the soil moisture and the hiding place. That small pause can preserve a useful predator, reveal a hidden pest outbreak, and keep you from replacing a functioning food web with another chemical treatment. Have you ever run into an earwig in your own home? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. If you want to know who else is living in your house, subscribe. In the next episode, you will meet another night hunter that looks alarming but quietly patrols the cracks around your home. See you in the next episode.